Hey kittens, it's Megan, and today I am doing a reading wrap-up. So let's go ahead and jump into my reading journal, and I will be going over all of the things. Starting off with January's total, I read a total of 14 books this last month. I managed to split it evenly between the young adult demographic and the adult demographic. I read 7 each, and I really did enjoy that. Now, when I included my average rating, I got a 3.75, but that was excluding several books, and the reason for that is because they are part of the same series, and I never think of them critically when I'm enjoying them. It's kind of like just turning on an episode of Criminal Minds. You never really critically analyze it, you just enjoy the team dynamic and the serial killers, and it'll make more sense later, I promise. The longest book that I read was This Is How We Fly by Anna Mariano, and I will include a link to that review up in this little card area here. The shortest that I read was Strange Exit by Parker Peavyhouse. What surprised me the most is that my most read genre was contemporary romance. I do not read a lot of contemporary novels normally. I just cannot put myself in the moment with them a lot of the time. But surprisingly this month I managed to read 5 of them, and that was by far the most read genre. I don't even know how to describe how I feel about that. My favorite book that I read this month was Girls Save the World in This One by Ash Parsons. I loved this book. It was very meta, and I will go over the breakdown in a minute. But I have to geek out because, seriously, a zombie apocalypse starting at ZombieCon. It was very meta. It had all of the fun things about cons, so this is definitely my favorite here. All right, moving on to the January TBR spread. Now, this was before I decided to split them up into new releases and old books. This was just kind of a hodgepodge of whatever I felt like I wanted to read. And so I managed to read a total of 7 books from this list, and I will be going over the order, but I was very happy with that, and I love how this spread turned out, just because these little holographic stars next to each book that I read with the little rating underneath them. It's very aesthetically pleasing to me, and I will continue on with this vein in February. Now, the first book that I read this month was not something that I recorded in this journal, and that's because this is one of those book series that I just enjoy. I don't ever want to think about it critically. It's like I said, it's like turning on Criminal Minds for me. It is just something that I purely enjoy. I never think of it critically. So I'm gonna go ahead and break it down. The first book that I read this month was Dark in Death by J.D. Robb. Now, this one is an Eve Dallas mystery, homicide detective in futuristic New York, and the case that they work on in this one is a serial killer who is murdering people in the same way that it is done in a famous book series in the Eve Dallas world. And so it was kind of a bit like the TV show Castle, if you guys remember that one. The very first episode, how the murder victims were all being murdered the way that they were dying in the books. So I enjoyed that one. Again, didn't rate it critically, gave it 5 stars just because it's one of my favorites of the series. The next book that I read was Leverage in Death, also by J.D. Robb. This one was a lot of fun. It was a little more on the dark side. I mean, it's a homicide detective, police procedural kind of series, but the case this time that they were trying to solve was a bomber at a airline, and I loved a lot of the character dynamics in this one. Would highly recommend this series to anyone. The first book that I read that was not part of the In Death series was This Is How We Fly by Anna Mariano. Now, I did a video review, which I will link up here again. This one is about a teenager in that transition space between high school and college, learning how to be her own person, and she ends up joining a summer Quidditch league. It was a lot of fun to listen to, and I hope you guys will click on that link, explore the review. It was a lot of fun. I did rate that book 4 out of 5 stars. The next one that I read was Girls Save the World in This One by Ash Parsons. This was a 4.5 star book. It was so fun. just like I was saying before, zombies at a zombie con, very meta, had all of the fun parts of convention life that I totally used to enjoy, and it just was very nostalgic for me to be in that mental space and get to see all of that. I could picture it at the local convention center where Salt Lake Comic-Con would be at. So yeah, I know. It's not Comic-Con anymore, it's FanX, but it's always going to be Comic-Con to me. The next book that I read was They Went Left by Monica Hesse. This was a 4.5 book, 4.5 stars, and it messed me up. I typically will avoid books that take place during the Holocaust. It is one of the greatest human atrocities of, recent history, and I know that bad things happen all over the world, but this one, it guts me every time I read anything even remotely related to it, and I knew that reading this one was going to be a huge challenge for me this month. I was right. I kind of went into a depressive funk after it, but it was very much worth the read. The story is about a girl who has recently been released from a concentration camp, and she's on the search for her brother because they were split up when they were put into the camp. And honestly, it was one of the hardest books I've ever read emotionally. So would I recommend it? Yes, but I would only recommend it to someone who I think would be strong enough to handle being in that headspace, and not everybody is. So it is one that I think everybody should try to read, but I would be very careful with recommending it to certain people in my life. Following the heavy subject matter of They Went Left, I decided I needed a palette cleanser, and so I decided to go contemporary fun. I'll Be the One by Lila Lee, and this is about a plus-sized Asian American girl who just wants to be a K-pop star. And so she enters a competition, and it was so much fun to read. It got me out of that slump, and the character, she was just so much fun. That one was given a 4 out of 5 stars. Following my little K-pop break, I decided to read Strange Exit by Parker Peavyhouse. Now, this book, I have so many comments. It could have been amazing. I think that it was a little too rushed. I think it wasn't very well polished. I completely fell in love with the premise. It is about a girl who is in a virtual landscape, trying to convince the people who are in the landscape that they need to leave it. It's a virtual reality that they've been put into on a spaceship after the Earth has started to fall apart. And so the thing is, this virtual reality is starting to fall apart. The ship is breaking down, and the only way that they can get onto the escape pods is if everybody is out of the virtual reality. So the main character will go in and out of this reality trying to convince people that it is not real and that they need to leave. The premise was amazing. Execution left a little bit to be desired. Did I still rate it 3 stars? Absolutely, because I enjoyed it. I will be looking for more books by this author because I think there's a lot of promise here, and I wish that it had been executed a little bit differently. The next book that I read is not in this journal because it was not part of my plan, and Netflix made me do it. It was The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, which was recently done up as Bridgerton on Netflix, which, oh my god, I love that show so much. I've watched it like twice now. Highly recommend it. This is definitely a hot topic right now, especially on TikTok. There's a Bridgerton musical movement going on. It's kind of fascinating to watch it being built, but I enjoyed it a lot. I think that there were a lot of problematic things about it, especially, I'm sorry, there's a trigger warning here. Don't listen to the next 5 seconds. Male rape. It is not dealt with in a way that would make sense for me anyway, but it's kind of brushed under the rug. That is not, that's neither here nor there. Just, if you're gonna read it, think about it before you read it. See if you are interested in reading something like that. The show does talk about it, it shows it, it twists it so it's not quite so horrible, but it still exists in the world. I did end up giving that book 3.5 stars out of 5. The next book that I read was also part of the In Death series. It is called Connections in Death. I believe it's number 46 or 47. I'll have to double check that. I was wrong, it's number 48 of the series, and this one, the main character, Eve, and her husband are building a children's school/shelter, and the psychologist that they've hired, her brother is murdered, and so Eve is trying to solve the case when it's hitting so close to home in her horrible past and her husband's past. And I really love this one because it pushes the characters even further to solve the case, and it was a lot of fun. I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars just because, obviously, like I said, it's my favorite. I will never rate it critically, so just 5 stars for everybody. The next book that I read was another In Death series. This one is called Vengeance in Death, and this one is about a vigilante calling herself Lady Justice, murdering people, and Eve has to solve the case. It was a lot of fun. It made me question like the morality a little bit of our justice system, justice versus, vengeance, all of that, how that stacks up in the real world, and feeling like things are being dealt with accordingly in the justice system. Again, couldn't rate it critically just because, well, I've said it so many times already, I can't rate this series critically. 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Kpop Confidential by Stephen Lee. This was another fun K-pop centric one. It was about a person in a company trying to debut as a pop star. And this was a lot of fun. You got to see a little bit inside the idol machine, as the best way to describe it is. Obviously it's a fictional account, and the main character was questioning a lot of the things that were happening in the process of becoming a K-pop star. So this was a lot of fun. It also tackled the whole non-dating clause that a lot of the idols have to sign contracts for, and it was, I think it was a lot of fun. It was a 3.5 rating for me. The next book that I read was Golden in Death by J.D. Robb. This one is, well, it's the 50th book in this series, so kind of 50 golden anniversary. It was kind of a fun one in the fact that you got to explore the characters more. Some side characters made a lot more appearances, and the case itself was kind of fascinating because people were receiving these, little tacky golden eggs that when they opened it, it was filled with poison gas. And so Eve and her group, her team, had to solve it. I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Shine by Jessica Jung. She is a former K-pop star from Girls' Generation, and I did not like this one. It was very shallow. It didn't really build on anything, and I think it could have been a lot more deep, especially coming from someone inside the industry, but it was very shallow. It was very quick in pacing, where it should have been a little more broken down. So I only gave that one a 3 out of 5 stars. It was an okay read, not a great read. The last book that I read in the month of January was Shadows in Death by J.D. Robb. This one dealt a lot with the main character Eve, her husband's past, someone that he, grew up with on the streets of Dublin. He became a contract killer, and so they're trying to not really solve, but they're trying to catch him. They know he's the murderer. They're trying to stop him before he will start attacking the people in Eve's husband's life, and Eve would be one of his main targets. So that one, again, 5 out of 5 stars. So when I broke down my rating of 3.75, I did not include any of the in-depth books in that rating. Like I said, those are for pure enjoyment, no critical thinking at all. And so I wanted to remove them from the total and just do an average. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick flip through of the actual journaling portion of my wrap up so you can see what I did. We're gonna start with This Is How We Fly. I like to do these little like library index card things. I include the title, the author, if they identify as male or female, the date I read it, the medium, its rating, what genres it is, and my favorite quote. So I will be doing a little bit more with that in just a moment, but I will break it down into that 8-point system that I had shown you in my first reading journal video. The ones that I break it down into are character strength, character growth, plot strength, pacing, world building, writing style, individuality and impact, and enjoyment. So then I just kind of write out how I feel about the book on enjoyment. So on the This Is How We Fly, I knew I was going to do a review on this one, so I went a little more in depth. So I, had distinct points to talk about in that review. But if I'm just analyzing the book for myself, I don't always go into this kind of breakdown. And that I can point out here in my favorite book of the month, The Girl Saved the World, in this one. And how I broke that one down is I wrote down a conscious stream of thoughts as I was going. I included some quotes from the book directly, things that I liked, things that I didn't like secondhand embarrassment, things like that. I love the idea of fandom as a collective, allowing you to be a part of something bigger than yourself. Fandom can almost be like a religion in ways, and so that was kind of a big thing here. And then again, more quotes, my final thoughts. Like I said, I absolutely love this one. And then my overall rating with the little card detailing all of the details I just talked about, the individual ratings, and kind of a little statement here about what the book was truly about in one sentence. So that was just kind of a conscious stream of thoughts. I kind of liked doing it this way versus the breakdowns like this. They both have their moments. They both are useful in their own ways, but I don't know exactly if I'm going to keep going that route. Next one I did was They Went Left. The first thing I wrote was this book is going to gut me. I was completely right about that. I wrote down all of my thoughts. I had to stop right here after I wrote there was so much ... I needed an emotional break there. And then down at the bottom here, I broke it down into the individual stats. I'll be the one, just kind of a stream of thoughts, the rating, and the card here. Strange Exit. This is one that I broke down like I did the very first book into the individual sections. I did like a 1-sentence summary of the book. And just broke it down and wrote down my rating. After that was the Kpop Confidential. Again, I broke it down into the individual rating sections. I don't think I really did, I did actually, in Shine. This one, I just kind of analyzed it, why I didn't like it so much. But I did enjoy the quote here. It's up to us to be independent, to tell ourselves the truth of what we are capable of, and to do everything we know we have the strength to do. That quote was the one nugget of greatness that I took out of this. That is it for this reading journal wrap up for the month of January. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you liked seeing how I break down my reviews, how I analyze the books a little bit, and why I rated the books the way that I did. If you guys did read any of these same books, let me know what you thought about them. I would love to hear from you guys. If you guys want to follow along on this reading journey with me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all in my next video.